Hello. This is me, Aphid, speaking, and I'm going to commentate on a little game I played. Of course, this is Transport Tycoon. This is OpenTTD, and I played a game here on Luclan's server, which is something I've became a little bit of a fan of, because it's a very interesting way of playing competitively in this game. In the end it still degrades to a clickfest, but somewhat less than normally would. The rules are also quite interesting as well. If you are interested in playing this game, then I recommend looking at the rules on the internet on their page. In any case, there's several Luclan servers. The one I joined as the Citybuilder type game. Servers, I believe 4, 5 and 6 continuously run city builders throughout the day, so there's a city builder starting each hour. The games themselves last 3 hours each, so this is also a 3-hour video. The game hasn't started yet, and I'm simply surveying the map. Before the game starts, there are about 10 minutes you have available to survey the map, so I'm simply looking around for basically decent starting locations. This is Temperate 1980, as you can see in the bottom of the screen. And the best way to start in Temperate 1980 is to transport coal by train in a diagonal line. Reason for that is, well, there's multiple reasons for that. The main reason, of course, being coal is the most expensive cargo. You get paid for each square you transport a bit of cargo. Therefore, the longer you transport something, the less... how do you explain that? The longer you transport something, the smaller the fraction of time that your engine actually spends loading and unloading said cargo. For example, if we transported the coal 1 tile, right, then the proportion of time actually spent loading and unloading is huge. So the profitability of that route is very low, even though that the payment per square is the highest, because you immediately transport it. The payment goes down as you transport something longer, so there's a point whereas making the line even longer doesn't really help. So what you're actually looking for is a line you can just afford, because that point actually is just after the point where you can't afford more train sections. So you're looking for about 200 diagonal squares, and of course you want coal on both sides of the line, so you can haul it back and forth, again doubling the profitability. I believe I've spotted quite a few options here. As you can see, I'm keeping the most interesting options in the top right of my screen simply by queuing the industry. I'm looking at my competition, and I see that there are some competitors, so it's good to have a plan B. I think I do not end up using... No, I do not end up using plan B. I can spoil that for you for a fact. So again, we are simply slowly but surely finding more and more spots that are decent enough. What you actually want is about 400 tons of coal per month at your starting location, and about 300 tons of coal per month at your destination location, all within reach of a single station. You can use station spread to increase your station's effective size to 15 by 15 tiles. So this is quite a large area, and there usually is or are multiple spots with at least 3 mines. And I've seen some games where it was actually possible to grab up to 600 tons of coal per month in the best locations. However, it's also important to survey the other elements of the landscape as well. Most importantly, locations of large bodies of water, mountains and farms. Mountains are basically impossible terrain at the start because it's way too expensive to tunnel through them, and it is not recommended to build your train lines over a mountain because your trains will simply not be capable of dragging all that coal on, because we have both realistic acceleration and a times 3 cargo modifier. What that means is it's going to be 3 times as heavy as implied, so you'll only be able to haul very small loads up a mountain. Therefore, going around them is recommended. However, building a line through a farm is very expensive, right? I'm looking around here. I'll have to go through this farm to get through these 4 coal mines. However, the location is kind of ideal in other respects because after that one tricky bit, there is a large swath of open land that is ideal for a mostly diagonal line. Looking at the other side, here is also a farm in the way, but it isn't as bad. I believe I end up picking a line like this. So now I'm actually also looking at a town. Promby Cross, something along those lines. This town is the town I'm wanting to actually end up growing. I mean, what it means is that in Citybuilder, you pick one town by putting your HQ in that town, and you deliver as much stuff as possible to that town to make it grow. Well, not really as much as possible, just as much as it needs or more, and it will start growing. The person with the biggest town at the end of the game will win. So why did this coal mine start? You ask. To make a town grow, you need 5 well-serviced stations in that town. Well, you could argue that, but if you start with buses in your own town, you'll quickly go bankrupt because of the harsh economic settings. What you want is a money line to start with, then go on to growing your town. And I'm looking for perhaps alternatives while there is still time. And yeah, I see a bunch of coal mines. Yeah, there's a total of 5 closely located together, but they're on the mountain side. Again, this is also an interesting location. However, the line that I would have to build would be mostly non-diagonal because of the configuration of the mountain sides. There's been a little bit of a problem this week with the server where people get lag for around 20 seconds during which the server realigns itself because it had some networking issues. I believe the server was located somewhere in Eastern Europe. To pay a little bit of attention with either Czech or Polish or something. So it might be that they have some connection issues there. The internet there is usually not that great. Cheap and affordable, yes, but it does not, of course, not match the quality that some other places get. Of course, if you live nearby there, then the server is going to be much more responsive than it will be for me. Although, if I look at it geographically, these countries are closer than you might expect. It's one of those things. Right, so a game is starting in 10 seconds now. So it's notified by the server. It's quite nice. And I'm just sitting in the time blocks and immediately, well, there's my password for you. It's not like that's really useful because you can change it every game. Looking around, okay, so I'm trying to dump a train station ASAP. So in this server, competition is actually allowed as long as it's reasonable. It's not considered very nice to compete with someone else on their first line, mostly because, well, you're effectively ruining the game for you and whatever opponent you're screwing. So that's not really recommended unless it's like a 1v1 game where you try to Oh, there was my computer going screensaver mode. We don't want that. Like a 1v1 game where there are still some other rules as well. What I'm doing here is I'm making a single coal truck to basically get the station on the other side of the line to get a couple tons of coal as well. And I'm quickly going back this train here. Right, so this is basically how you start, right? You bulldoze a depot, or if you were smart and actually put a single tile rail in between your station and your depot, you could actually get away with simply only bulldozing that one tile rail, saving you some money when you need to put back the depot later to buy a second train. Just a thought. Right, so of course you'll have to build fast because it's temperate, so you have fast trains. However, I'm also trying to build as economically as possible, because I'm trying to get as far as I can, as close as I can to my destination with the money I have. And then once I run out, try to get a power line. So you can see the train's starting to run, but I'm kind of stuck figuring out how to get over this hill. Right? And it's necessary to borrow money. And after this, I believe it is necessary to... Ah, here we go, yes, the train gets stuck there. It's a bit unfortunate. And we have a solution to our problem. A very crude one, I might add. Requiring to turn the train around, of course. And we can subsequently get to the easier part of the line. Which is simply straight through the landscape. Again, looking around and trying to spot ideal places to lay rails. So one other thing, when you lay these rails, one thing to watch out for is tight corners. Trains do not like tight corners. They can't go fast through tight corners. So what you want to do is to, at least in temperate, have at least a length of 7 in between corners as much as possible. It doesn't really matter for the first train because it's an SH125 locomotive. Always buy that one if it's available because it's very good. I realize that I run out of money incidentally here. I could have saved those few dollars I spent on those rail sections, but it's not much of a deal. Actually, it's yen, I believe. I put it on yen, yes. I like the prices on yens because they're a little bit more realistic. If I pretend the yens are actually dollars or euros or whatever, they more realistically reflect the price of a locomotive. 7 million for a locomotive, that sounds about right. 70,000? No, not that much. It would be a very cheap locomotive. I believe a truck costs about 300,000 for a default model. So this is about correct. At least of the correct order of magnitude. The default amounts. Of course, the default amounts would be in the correct order of magnitude in about 1910, in the early ages. And of course, because it's a competitive server, inflation is off because it tends to ruin things quite a bit for people. We have some chat going on. I'm not really interested. As we're laying the final bits of rail. What I'm trying to do here is, of course, get to my town's power station, which is over here. And I tend to have this problem where I try to go too fast for my own good and mess up my clicking. So what I do now is I order my train to my own settlement, and then to the coal mines nearby my own settlement, and then back to the target. Someone else is building a line nearby my own. And here we can also see one of the rules of the server in action. If I zoom into the other line, I believe I'm not doing soon. Yes, oh yes, that's where the eventual station is going to go, of course. That power plant is going to be my destination for the other side of the dual line. I'll have a single train, right? With a single train you only need a single rail. However, we'll want as much trains as we can on this line to make the maximum amount of money from it. So therefore we're going to need something called switches soon as well. And the way this other player is building his bridges is allowing me to actually expand my line into 2 lines, which is very nice of him. It's sort of standard practice on this server to always bridge like this. Because to be honest, not doing that, here we see the other player making actually a mistake, and we're kind of pointing this out, that these tight corners of his are slowing down his train to 88 kilometers per hour, which is not very good because his line will be slower and he'll earn much less money from it. So never build your lines like that. This station is useless, right? It's an unused station. Now, having unused stations or unused rails is actually against the rules of the server when it is obstructing to other players. So I must remember to, when I'm actually earning enough money to justify the cost, demolish this station in the middle, and I believe I do this later. There's no rules being broken here. It's kind of relevant because I believe this attempt ends up being quite successful. Right, again, if you're looking for max efficiency, professional level play, mine definitely isn't. You can definitely do better. The most effective play would involve immediately buying a second train when the first train arrives, I believe. But I go for what is probably the second best option, which is buying some extra rails for the money, therefore allowing my train to make more money in its second trip. And then when it arrives from its second trip, buying both the second train as well as the extra rails required. Here's the second train. So the second train is not coming out, of course, because here's where I make this crucial mistake, where I'm not doing the most effective play anymore, because what I did up till now was acceptable, was doable, but here's a crucial thing. I forget to build basically what is a switch in the middle of my rail, right? I build this expansion so my first train can actually arrive at its intended destination, but I could have had my second train out by now and actually running on the rail instead of building this row section, which isn't actually required because I can wait with it until my first train actually arrives at the power station, which would have made a switch affordable and thus would have allowed my second train to arrive, well, 2 months earlier basically. So that is a bit of sloppiness on my part there. I could have also ordered my first train to actually go to the power station in the middle. I decide not to do this. You can see the first train is going at quite a rapid pace. What this does allow me to do is get the trains running behind each other, which can be a bit of a help when expanding the line to a dual line, especially when you use signal ignoring to get the trains to pack more tightly onto your rail. Got to be careful with that. I'm getting a bankruptcy warning here and having to sort out some audio issues. Not really very important. And here we go. As you can see, this is about comparable to having your supply count get blocked in an RTS game. It is quite damaging when I look at it from this perspective. Considering that I'm looking at the game at basically what is a replay of an earlier game, I find out what my own mistakes are. So here is probably the most grave error in the game. This could have probably got me at least 10% more population in the end if I had not made this error here and actually built my switch before I did this is row section. Of course I can now quickly finish the row section, but it is a bit of a noobish move. Again, I'm micromanaging the trains to make sure that they are both running. And now I'm seeing that the other player has put it just on the wrong side, but for ideal expansion, but it is not that big of an issue for me whatsoever. Alright, now we have both trains now running behind each other. And I'm actually going to consider buying a third train and running that behind the first two. Again, the audio problems kept cropping up. I believe they were eventually fixed by a change. So here we have two trains running right behind each other. I'm waiting a bit for buying the third train, so that on the return trip they won't be too clustered together. Or I believe I consider actually, instead of buying the third train, buying more switches. When you're at this point in the game, the choice between more trains and more switches is paramount to the success, your financial success. Build too many trains and you'll cause a jam, and that will basically be the end of your company, unfortunately. Build too little trains and, well, you could have done a little bit better. You know, you invest a lot of money into rails and you'll be slightly slower as far as your start is gone, but the risks are kind of the same as when starting out on the line, meaning that if you take too much risk, you're basically insta-gibbed, you're dead. And if you take too little risk, then your eventual city size is going to be slightly less, but at least your company won't, you know, blow up. Because this was a recording of a game that I specially made to just demonstrate the principles of the city builder game. I did not take as much risk. As you can see, I did not buy my third train until I had at least a good couple switches. And to newbie players, I really recommend this strategy. Don't buy your third train until you have at least, well, if you have two trains, one switch in the middle is probably going to do the job. But if you're going to have three trains, then I recommend having at least 3 to 4 switches on your line. And if you're going to have 4 trains, well, maybe 6 or 7 switches will do the job quite well. Because having trains stop will require them to basically start up again from 0 kilometers an hour. And trains are slow to accelerate things. Especially if they have to accelerate up a hill, that can be deadly. They can just stop dead in their tracks altogether. So when you get a decent amount of trains, 4 or 5 trains, first basically duplexing all the track that you have is of a much higher priority than getting more trains, because now I've got a steady income. I've got trains arriving every month or every 2 months, full of coal, hauling them all across the map, so getting large amounts of money. Oh, here, this line here through this farm is done a bit inefficiently, and mostly to circumvent having to lay through too many tiles of farmland. But now that I actually have the money streaming in, making my route significantly shorter by doing basically this is a very good investment. And I'm quickly trying to expand my rails as much as possible. This can be a bit of a micromanagement thing, where you'll have to constantly change whether or not your original track was the track to the destination or the track from the destination. So you'll constantly switch directions on it. And you'll have to remove various small sections of track. You have to remember to remove the tracks because if you are basically what I'm doing, relaying the route, then the pathfinding for the trains usually gets confused. And if you allow basically these small single sections of track, like the one on the left of this screen, to exist, aside from the purpose for which this one's being used, which is good, then trains might go into them, bump into a signal, and then basically be stuck because they're on both sides of a rail, right? And their signals going one way, and signals going the other way, and the train just gets permanently stuck. If you don't spot that, then you might as well not have played the game in the first place. So hotkeys in this case are very useful. So hotkeys is like 5 to use the flexible rail laying system, R while pressing 5, so 5R to quickly remove rails, and S for signaling. And I like to use a signal width of 2, as well as at least on this competitive server, by default use the path signals. They basically function the same as regular ones on normal rails, but they have extended functionality when it comes to what I'm doing here basically is making sure that my system is simple and not English by reversing direction here, because my rows are exactly the wrong way around. So fun all around here. And again, removing these little sections that might cause trains to get lost. And having 41 million in the bank, so that's very good. And once the rail upgrades are finished, we can focus on the next aspect, because as you start out, the coal income will be quite high, 300 tons of coal a month. After a month, your train will be fully loaded. Alright, and then the single train, your first train, will go and go to the power station, take about 3 months. So there's 1,000 tons of coal waiting at the station. So you can easily get 4, 5, 6 trains running and loading permanently. But after a while, after about slightly more than a year or about 2 years, that coal will have vanished. That's why it's so good to have like 400, 500 tons of coal in a month on your first station, because the time before this happens is much larger. However, it has now happened. As you can see, there's 2 trains waiting for coal to actually appear at my starting station. So what we're going to do now is we're going to accelerate this process, because, well, we don't want our main line to make less money than it actually can. So we're going to feed this main line. We're going to use another train that's just going to carry coal one way, but use a transfer order. So this transfer train is actually going to be about, well, I think about a quarter, about 25% as profitable as the trains that are on the main line, because A, it has to wait for its cargo much more of the time, and B, it only brings coal one way and not 2 ways. So these transfers are, well, relative to the main line, are actually some investment that actually costs you quite a lot. So having 1 or 2 trains queued up at your main line for a newbie player is actually just fine. It's much better to have 1 or 2 trains queued up as it is to have basically no trains queued up. Probably what happens to me later, so I may apologize for making this newbie mistake here. When your feeder line is short, you can actually use a shorter train, of course. Oh, this is only a very short feeder. My model of feeders is usually to have simply a single line for a single feeder train. However, if you one of your feeders especially productive, you can double up the line, or instead you can double up your destination, right, and have your feeders merge into each other. I believe that's what I use on this side, but not on the other. Or no, this one gets a dedicated line, and I believe some other feeder actually gets joined into the large train one, probably because this is a different train size. You can also use trucks to feed. When the feeding line is short, especially in the desert climate, people like to use trucks to feed because they are cheaper than buying a full train. Buying a full train is about 11 million yen, but buying a truck is about 800,000. So buying 4 or 5 trucks is about half as expensive as a train. However, there is a limit of only 300 trucks you can have, so it is paramount that you pay attention to this thing here. Trucks, of course, have the similar orders. You copy the truck, pressing Control while copying, so that they have shared orders. All my trains on my main line have shared orders as well. Multiplayer servers is also considered common practice to use the groups to group your vehicles together. However, on this server, that's just time consuming in my opinion, and it's not worth doing. Because you could have spent that time building more rails, building more stuff, getting more stuff to your town. This is a demonstration game, so sometimes I go a little bit slowly in places. So that's also something that can actually be improved on. There's a lot that can be improved on my game here. But for demonstration purposes, I'm a lot better than what most first-timers come up with. And that's why I'm basically showing it, of course, so that someone who's new to this server can actually go look at this replay and see what the basic ideas are, basically. So again, we're feeding both sides of the line. You might notice that there's no trains waiting on this station here. One part of it is that it actually has one coal mine more than the other side, but another major part of that is that the trains are only ordered to full load on one side of the line. The reason is that if you have a line which is basically dual, and add hauls coal back and forth, then I'm building a very complex thing here. Well, you can just look at it and see if you can figure out how it works. But anyway, the thing with dual lines is that it's almost invariable that one side of the line is going to have higher production than the other. This is also very nice. This is an interesting station design. It's actually quite like it. It's a sort of modified design from the dual terminus station. Dual terminus station basically is one 2-line terminus station on 2 tracks, and then another one next to it, and then a bridge in one of the tracks so that the other can go underneath, and you can have sort of split in the line and have 4 platforms for one line. That's basically the most efficient station. It will, with reasonably fast trains, it can be serviced by a continuous stream of trains that are just like tightly packed together. This station design only has 3 loading bays, but it comes very close to the 4-bay version as far as say productivity goes. So again, we're building the same design at the coal mines as well, because it is also an terminus station. So the end result ends up being a little bit complex, might I just add, with various bridges and tunnels underneath and above each other. Here we have a 3-layer intersection that's actually being created. For passenger transport to various locations using a destinations modifier on the game, I sometimes like to build stack interchanges as well. It's maybe something to... I think I demonstrated one in the video with my personal transport company, which just has a lot of eye candy in it. Basically, it's not as efficient as it can be, Well, in this case, of course, we want it to be. We're going to build another one of those same design terminus stations here. The local authorities being a bit annoying. The solution to that is just trees. Just plonk down a bunch of trees and they'll be happy with you again. At least moderately happy. And if they get angry with you again, well, then demolish all the trees and make them go to polling and then pop them all back and then they'll be happy with you again. It's a love-hate relationship. Now, again, when you're building something complex, make sure that you know what you're doing. I did not know what I was doing right here until the very last moment, so this ended up being a little bit dodgy. Because I realized that if I build it like this, and trains will have to pass over the in-feeding line through the out-feeding line, and the actual point of the whole design would be nullified. And that would be a bit of a shame. And then I realized, wait, I can adjust this design so that my first design would actually be correct. And that's what you end up doing. So just to get things straight here, that's the output. But we need an input for the third line as well, so we actually get 2 input lines and 1 output line. But hey, I think, wait, that's not correct. You need 2 output lines and 1 input line for the design. So where have I gone wrong? Turns out that the output needs to be shifted by 1 tile to the left. Right, because the input needs to be in the center and the output needs to be on the left side. Though it appears to be correct, I can't add a third input easily to the outside of the current input. I mean, no, wait, I can't add a second output easily on the right side because I can't make a bridge over my own rail when it's in this diagonal form. I mess up my landscaping. And I realize, oh wait, that rail is 1 tile below the actual place where it needs to be. There's some trains waiting, but it's not a problem in this case because we're waiting for the train at the loading station to leave. Of course, there's a full train waiting, which is kind of bad, but there's no real there's no easy way to fix that other than to first build the destination station and here I actually perfect the design and get it all working. As you can see, we have 1 input, 2 outputs. It's very neatly done. So I realized, well, that guy is leaving, so what I should have done here is first build the extension to the station with the coal mines, of course. That would have prevented the jam. Okay, we skip ahead a bit here because I did some very boring things that you're not really interested in, which is this. Building a bunch of these rows here and there. Building those roads, well, it's basically the standard road design for my town. I'll be focusing on my town a lot later, so we'll be seeing more of that. Why is the road design in the town like that? Well, because less roads means more buildings, and more buildings mean more people, and more people is the highest score, and the person with the highest score wins the game. I think you'll realize what's been going on here now. It's a bit like a swastika, so I'll try to minimize the amount of me showing that off, but it just happens to be the most efficient design, sadly. And I probably realize here that the bridge head is at the wrong level. Again, this type of design for my feeder lines is again a very safe design, in that the chances of trains getting stuck here are virtually nil, but you could probably do with less rails if you were a more frugal player. You just have to pay attention to your trains a little bit more to prevent them from getting jammed behind each other, especially once you start feeding with more than one train on each feeder line, in which case they could get into the switches and branches and could have to wait there. If they stop a train on the other side of the line, then this might cause a jam. And we're feeding both sides of the line. We're trying to feed it as equally as possible, but making sure that the south side at least has equal or more than the north side in feeders. Because otherwise we'd have coal piling up on the north station and nobody to take it away, because everyone's waiting at the south station. Of course, I'm assuming that we have more coal on the south side because that's where we're taking it from, right? The only coal that's actually important for the town is the coal that's taken from the south side. Does the town need coal? Yes, in fact. Coal is the first resource that your town needs once it passes 250 inhabitants. I realized that the player that built the bridge over my line has given up. There's some reason for him leaving the game. So I can make my line slightly more efficient by exactly one tile. That's always nice. There is no further impact of him on my game, which is quite great. So we're coming to my town. So what did I build here? So I built roads in like a swastika pattern to minimize the amount of roads I built, and I put 3 pairs of bus stations. Right, 5 stations are required to get your town to go to full growth speed. These are 6 stations, so it'll go full growth speed. The actual passengers being transported are not relevant until my town hits 500 people, and by then you should actually get a passenger service into town, which is, I believe, what I always build after coal. However, first I make sure that my coal actually get a valid continuous input of coal, because the town requires coal every month, and trains are just like giant, huge chunks of coal, like 360 tons of coal that come in one swath. There's a problem with that, and that's that your town requires at least this and this many coal each month. So if you have like a bad month where no trains arrive, then your town will stop growing, because it needs to meet its demands. You need to meet its demands for at least 2 months in a row before it actually grows. As you can see, I am meeting its demands. I'm typing ! town to get this information in the bottom left corner. It shows me I'm meeting its demands as far as I'm concerned. Of course, once it starts growing, then its demands will increase. We'll have to keep meeting its demands from now on. One other thing we can do is fund the town, which is, I believe, what I already did. That it increases building speed for 3 months. You should, and I'm a very bad example of someone who does not do this, fund your town every 3 months, just like, without delay. It's probably like identical to, if I may reference StarCraft here a bit, the mechanic used by the Zerg in StarCraft with their queens, where they have to transfuse every 15, whatever it was, every so and so many seconds. You have to transfuse every hatchery. Well, same here. Every 3 months, which is slightly more benign, I say so, you have to, and I repeat, have to fund your town. Oh, well, there's one case in which you don't need to, and it's if you messed up your railways and you're not bringing enough staff there. That's when you don't have to actually fund the town, because it won't grow anyway. But in all other cases, yes, please keep funding the town. And that's actually my second biggest mistake in this game, apart from the messed up start, which is really bad. So I'm here, you can see me funding new buildings. I leave the town overlay on in the hope that I don't forget it, but I'll forget it. I'm gonna forget it anyway. That sounded quite horrible. The town's going to pass 500 soon, so it's going to stop growing, unfortunately. I do not have the speed of my fingers required to build all this coal network that I need for money, as well as expanding my town rapidly. People tend to also like going for partnerships in this game. It's actually possible, and it's generally considered quite standard, that when someone gets a decent start, that someone else jumps in and helps them, the first person, like get passenger network, and then sometimes a third person jumps in and they try to set, especially when considered good players, they try to get high scores this way. It was quite cool because with the additional hands and additional eyes and brains, you can usually get up far higher scores than you could have gotten alone, for at least for most people. There's some people who work better alone, interestingly enough. That's crazy, crazy people. Luckily, there's no crazy people in my game this time. There was one quite decent person, but he left, I think. So again, we have so this line here is just to get more coal into my town, right? I'm trying to get a decent amount of it in my town, so I don't have to worry about it for quite some time. In retrospect, of course, building passenger service first would have been slightly better. However, at this point of time, town growth isn't very large. This isn't going to be very significant. It's not going to be a lot of houses in one time. So skipping a couple months in the first couple of years is not a great. It's not going to make a great difference. It's going to make a small difference in the end result. So we have two coal trains. So now I realize, oh, I'm above 500 already. Oh, that thing started growing and it grew quite fast. Built two flats. So what I should have been doing is this. Again, it's not a very good way to play. It's much better to play proactively and have this ready like half a year ago. So you can see Red building a large coal line nearby my town. It's also something that's considered bad manners to build very close to someone else's town, as close as you can basically get without the server saying, hey, you can't build here, in late dates like 1980 or later. Red Players is doing reasonably here, is quite far away from my lines, but it's just something I want to point out because towns tend to get quite big in temperate 1980, temperate 1985. I've actually seen a game where there were two people who had a town that like right next to each other, and one player was a very good player, the other player wasn't, so you had a small town. But the player who wasn't a good player actually could not build stuff in his own town anymore because it ended up being in the area of the other guy's town, which is kind of funny because the other guy was actually stealing people from the player who wasn't as good. That might actually be a way to improve the world record by quite a bit, but it may be seen as an exploit. Just maybe. I'm kind of 100% sure that this is some form of exploit here. Might need to be fixed. Here's some guys that actually ended up making a very profitable railway on another server, and then like a smiley face. Yeah, that's kind of nice. And notice that their prices are actually in pounds, so you have to multiply by 220 to get the price in yen in this game. £1 is 220 yen. We're talking pre-crisis prices here. I don't know if it's ever been that high. I think it must have been at some point in history, probably during the time when Chris Sawyer wrote the original version of Transport Tycoon. And for a lot of for historical reasons, a lot of the original game has been preserved in the OpenTTD version. So when you build these stations on these other towns, sometimes you want a single thing and sometimes dual, depending on dual is of course preferred, especially for towns that you think are going to go large. But single is sometimes better to get more coverage in your town because you are allowed to use up to two. Sometimes you can get away with you must use three. road vehicle stations inside a town and join them up via control clicking with your train station to increase coverage area to more parts of the town. The trains I'm using are 2 armored carriages and 3 mail carriages and the rest passenger carriages. It tends to be the easiest setup to work with for a solo player. When you're playing with a team of 2 or a team of 3 people and you want to only have passenger carriages and later on change your trains to more mail and more armored cars and end up with only mail or even only armored cars and have a lot of towns feeding into your thing. But a very good strategy for single player is to just grab 4 to 6 towns depending on how large and how they are and how good their banks are. I grabbed the full 6 in this demonstration video, I think. And feed those to 2 lane stations. And basically use an unload and not load order in your main town. That's very important because if you're taking away passengers from your town that you're growing to another town, then the passengers from your town can't basically count in your own town anymore. It says you need tourists, but the tourists can come from your own town. That's not a problem. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that all the people that are in your town actually stay there. Right? You want to make sure that they get transported by buses like 5 feet. Doesn't really matter because and interestingly enough, this is very important here, is that once your town becomes large enough, the amount of tourists it needs is actually going to be less than the amount of passengers it produces. So that's quite interesting here. That's why I mentioned that if you're playing 2-player, you want to change the coaches to mail and valuable coaches. You're going to need a slight bit of extra mail from another town until you become very big. Right, and then you need to transport like 95% of your own mail, so you're going to want mail from somewhere else in all cases. And you're always going to need a little bit of valuables, but I believe it's only a couple, 1 or 2% of your town size that you need in valuables. And you're going to need valuables at 2,500 only, so that's quite nice. And of course you need to fund a bank in your town. It's actually quite I should state what your town actually needs. From 500 onwards you need passengers, from 1,000 onwards you need mail, 1,500 goods, and 2,500 valuables or gold or whatever. If you're playing in tropical, you're going to need food and water. If you're playing in Arctic, you're going to need food as well as all of the other things that I've said so far. What I'm doing here is, I think, adding up 1 more coal mine, something. Yeah, adding up 1 more coal mine to the gathering of the coal, which will make this thing quite a tangled web of train lines, which is cool. I mean, that's the way we like things, right? Now appears to be quite complex, but in reality it's quite organized and it's quite simple. Of course, we just have, especially once you've seen how it's built up, it's just a couple of single lines merging from a standard merge into a dual line. So again, I forgot funding, of course. However, of course, it wasn't consequential because we didn't have passengers coming in. Right? And we need a steady flow of passengers coming in at this point in the town's growth cycle. So I'm getting more and more towns. I'm going to need 3 more towns just to be safe. Maybe I've gone a little bit overboard with 6, but 6 is a nice number to get. 3 on 2 stations, or all 6 on 1 station, as long as you make the station like a nice 4-line or 3-line station, or even separate the lines a bit. And then after that, you're going to want to either, if you're a very fast clicking person, you can get more train lines when your town grows very large to get valuables. Or if you're like me, you can go for something else, something a little bit original related to what we've been doing so far. Again, I try to grab the towns that are close to my own town. I'm also very lucky in that nobody else is competing with me for these towns, which is very nice of the other guys. I have to say, competition, when playing against smart people, they realize that competing actually hurts both sides equally badly. This hill here is being a bit of an annoying bastard here, where I have to. I'm now trying to build as fast as I can because I have like tons of money streaming in from my money line. So making things pretty and making things efficient is not really my concern. As long as it works, I just go with it. And something similar holds here. I'm kind of like realizing, no, this won't fit, that won't fit. Maybe you can, yes. There's a 50 tile terraforming limit, so that's something you have to pay attention to here. Here in this stage of the game, that you don't run into that problem where you're basically waiting for your terraform limit to clear. Always be building, he says as he looks around like an idiot and is not building. Be building, damn it! Right, my town's about to hit 1,000, so I'm going to expand my buses with a mail truck. You're only going to need one mail truck until your town becomes very large, because there's just much less mail than there's passengers always. I'm trying to figure out where to put the mail trucks on that side of the town. Maybe a little bit of a challenge with the coal truck being there. But again, that coal truck is being very useful because it's basically bringing as much coal as a normal train would. Because it's so close by. That's very nice. When you do actually have a very close by mine and its production is very low, it's best to not bring stuff to it and hope that it actually disappears so you have more room to grow your town. But this mine had very high production, so might as well use it because it's not going to disappear anytime soon. I believe that the dissipation, the half-life of a mine that's not being used is something like 5 to 10 years. So a mine with 160 tons of production before it actually hits the, what is it, 40 or 20 or so tons, that's the minimum production, is just, the ETA for that is so large that in most cases it will not happen. If you're very lucky it can, but in most cases it shouldn't. Like the overwhelming majority of cases. So I'm trying to figure out where to best put a passenger station here. Thinking, way I can do something interesting. You can actually use your HQ, because your HQ accepts some passengers. You can relocate your HQ to where you want your passenger station, put one rail tile so it's in range of your HQ, and then build your station. Don't forget to remove the one tile to comply with the rules of the server, which say that you should always load and unload under the station sign as much as is reasonably possible. So in this case I will have to change my design around a bit of the station and remove that one tile. My voice is getting a little bit sore after all this. I'll continue. We have a decently growing town now. We have a working coal line. I must remember to keep monitoring this line. I realize I have enough money to actually fund an additional coal mine. So yeah, when funding industries, it's very important to keep track of the date. Because the game is 12 years long, you want to fund the most profitable industries when the date is still reasonably young, and when the game starts getting old, you should be funding what you need the most, which in Temperate is usually farms, because it has the most production but it has the least profitability of the industries. That's quite important actually, because the very good players have been starting to figure out that only using farms is sometimes inferior to also using wood when it's already there, when you already got a sawmill. your town, or you can very easily fund one without obstructing things too much. The town I picked in this game is actually quite hard to grow because it has quite some hills nearby. It's also quite interesting. You pick your first town in the surveying section. It's like way back, like an hour ago. That a town with a lot of water, a town with a lot of hills nearby, is much harder to grow. And we'll soon realize why, because it requires so much more landscaping, so much more stuff to get it up to snuff, to get it as efficient as it can be. It's quite nice. There's quite a lot of coal mines here. I believe I do end up grabbing all of them later on in the game when I actually need the coal, but right now I'm just trying to keep up with my town, right? I'm trying to get all the stuff it needs. I'm building like a madman, but I'm still not keeping up. It's quite it can be quite stressful, yes. Again, trying to figure out how to get through these annoying bits where there's industries in the way of my line, and there's all sorts of other things happening everywhere. So just decide, what the heck, let's not consider ourselves with line length, and let's just get to the target ASAP. Which, yeah, may require a little bit of a short turn here. Do not do this, people, this short turn. Well, on the other hand, this is just a branch off from the main line. It is kind of bad, because it reduces capacity by a lot on the main line. So, I don't know, doing this is a very smart idea. You should actually use a little bit of a highway engineer inspiration here and use a lot of merge and branch lanes. So have an extra lane go off, branch off from your line, and then have it go off into wherever you want, into the sideline here. So this branch should actually have like two lines to the top left and not one. Because otherwise the train that's going to turn off the main line is going to have to slow down when it goes into the branch line, and trains behind it may cause a jam on the main line. So the main line is going to be reducing capacity before it jams by quite a lot. I believe that the speed of that turn is something like 150, and the trains are going to go 240 in the end. So you can see that's quite a reduction in capacity right there, as I mentioned. Yeah, if you go with the calculator brain, you can actually jam those numbers into a calculator and see exactly by how much percent, but it's just an exercise in uselessness. So the server's doing it again, but it comes up a couple times, but not too many. It sort of fixed most of this problem. It happened much more often earlier. So I'm hoping that the server admins will actually fix this completely. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Who knows? It's a nice game nonetheless, whenever they fix it or not. Alright, again, in the beginning we talked about building diagonal lines to maximize profit, but what we're trying here is maximize resource input, and when doing that, building diagonal lines is a bit of a bad idea because it's so hard to bridge over diagonal sections. To build complex infrastructure, complex branches and merges when you have all of these diagonal things going on, it's just going to be very annoying. So it's best to keep things straight when you're building like your feeder lines, your lines that feed stuff to your town, because they're not designed to be very profitable anyway. They're designed to get as much stuff in there as possible. I'm quite a cold here. Using 2 road depots in that town to get a greater coverage area. Notice I put down a train station first, so I'm loading under the station sign, and I'm not abusing the rules here. I mean breaking the rules. Same thing, abusing the game, breaking the rules. When I'm talking about abusing the rules, it's like weird. Again, there's basically 2 styles of branching. There's a style of branching where you have the thing that turns left, turn right, and then left, which is what I'm demonstrating here. This is the easiest to construct when you've already built your main line. And the other form of branching is where one of your main lines actually has a bridge in it, and the branching line dives under that bridge into the other main line. The second form is quicker as long as you have a low amount of traffic going through, but if you've got a high amount of traffic, so especially your first branch, you should not use that design, because the bridge may hold up your trains. Of course, if you replace that bridge with a double bridge, then it will not be an issue. However, this is the hardest version of branch to build, and it's not recommended for this server. Or if you've got quick things, you're welcome to try double bridging. I kind of still do it when it's for like main coal lines, but in other cases, or main wood lines in the tropical version, but in other cases I try to not do so. So again, we have additional coal here. We have 3 additional mines, and I realize maybe I can get something more out of here and grab them a little bit more efficiently. And as it turns out, yeah, I totally can do that. I can also grab this additional mine, taking care again that I do not exploit station spread, although in this case it would actually end up to me losing money due to the arrangement of stations. However, I am loading under the station sign, even though that's actually the more profitable option here. So this is the more standard way of doing it. In this case, actually both ways will be technically legal under the rules, both loading under and not under the station sign. Why? Because it's costing me money not to unload under the station sign, because my trains are going to haul it the other way, right? So picking it up there would in the end, ultimately end up in less profits, because the route distance is actually calculated from where you picked it up to where you, in the last leg, dropped it off. So this is quite complicated. We have trucks feeding into a train station feeding into a second train station, and the second train station finally delivering it straight to town. Talking about a complex way of doing things. Where feeding is generally better than directly delivering it from each individual mine. Why? Because a smaller percentage of your trains will actually end up being like raiding maintenance trains, right? You need at least one of those for each mine. But if that's the feeding train as well, then at least all the trains on the main line will be on the move a larger amount of the time than they will be loading. I realize here that, well, I could build this whole contraption, but maybe just maybe building a spur off the already existing feeder line would be a little bit more efficient. And there we go. So I decided, well, no, let's not bother with all this crap. Let's not build all this. Let's remove it, even though I kind of messed up here. And just build a very simple branch here, because it's not like this line is going to be completely full anyway, because it's just like 3-4 mines on it only. Let's extend it and make it 6 mines, and then we'll have 6 mines in one station. As it turns out, there's actually too much for that station to handle. It's just going to end up overloading. I mess up here and do a thing the wrong way. Again, bridging over here is a very smart way to do things, because the path length is not going to be that much less. I have 2 tiles less for the branch line. I think no, it's only going to be like half a tile, so quite efficient here. Not that this matters, the length of the branch line is not really that much of a deal. Of course, unless you make it ridiculous, in which case you're breaking the rules because you're doing blocking. So one other rule that's very important, don't block another player's ability of actually playing. If you lay down the entire map full with rows or rails, yeah, then you're just blocking everyone else. And it's not good sportsmanship, it's not very nice. It's not legal either. So, and of course, during that whole building frenzy, I forgot to do my econ. I forgot to fund the town, because I'm just an idiot like that. Right, so the next thing we need is goods. Town's at 1300 something, so we're quite close to when we need goods. And in temperate you need a lot, and I mean a lot of goods. So what you do is you get a factory, already have a factory in quite a decent spot, although it's a tiny little bit mislocated. So I decided to, well, not just take up a little bit of space to get a more efficient loading and unloading station right where I want it to be, which is right there. And then just put like 20 or so goods trucks into this station. I would full load in one and unload in the other, or just have them mill about and do their own business. Either way is fine. Having them mill about tends to get lower ratings but more capacity than giving them orders. Something to think about. I mean, the unload and load orders, of course, you always have to order them to both stations. So what they do is they pick it up at the goods factory and then drop it off at a station like 5 meters beyond that, where goods are actually accepted already because my town's growing. So we're going to have a large unloading station here. I decided not to bother with moving the station sign. We're just making the station gigantic because we're going to need that much lines in there anyway. So the first thing I do is, of course, grab the closest farm I can find because I need goods in fast and a lot. You need like immediately 500 tons a month, 500 units a month. So that ends up being about 800 units of livestock and grain each month that you need to grab farms. So what I do here is I have 7 livestock carriages and 5 grain carriages. Some players go with 6 and 6. As much of a more of a personal preference than anything. Production tends to be 1 to 1, of course, but a grain carriage is 30 tons and a livestock is 25. So if you go like 6 on 6, you get a capacity of 150 and livestock, 180 grain. And if you go like 7 and 5, you have 175 livestock and 150 grain. So in the end, yeah, it's just which resource you like most. 7 to 5 actually has 5 tons less capacity than 6 to 6. But I noticed that farms tend to go for the livestock side of things most of the time. 7 to 5 seems to do the job quite nice. I sometimes go for 6 on 6 as well. Still not quite sure which one of those variations is going to be the most effective. Right, so again here you want to use feeder systems as well. And that's just what we're going to do here. Expand this station a little bit to get more loading platforms so that the main line is going to be slightly more efficient. And with the farms I decided not to go for 3-lane terminus stations, but just the regular old 2-lane design, because I could build an additional lane just as effectively as I could, making a lane with 3-line stations. Because there's just so many farms around my town, it's not even funny. This time I am remembering to fund the town correctly, but it does not matter because it is stuck behind more goods. I realize I have a lot of money, so I'm just going to fund an additional coal mine because there's enough farms around anyway. The idea I haven't grabbed yet, they're actually close by. I'm looking around, checking if I have enough trains here. It turns out I do. 1996, around 1987, a new train becomes available. Around 86, 87. When you actually switch train type is up to you. I tend to do it when I have the cash flow for it, because it tends to be quite heavy on the cash flow. It tends to prevent you from funding industries, or prevent you from building as rapidly as possible. sometimes, especially with this change from SH125 to the TIM design. It tends to be quite heavy on the cache. And it is imperative that you manage to upgrade all your trains at once, because a line with, say, 20 SH125s on it is going to be more effective than a line with 10 SH125s and 10 TIMs. So why is that? Because the TIMs are all going to pile up behind the SH125s, and they're all going to stop, and then they're all going to become a jam, and that's going to actually travel slower than the SHs would have. Something to keep in mind. That's actually going to happen anyway if you use auto renew, unless you have depots everywhere along your route. If you have a very long route, so it's something very important. Upgrading trains can be quite a painful exercise. Your network isn't built to accommodate it, and mine actually isn't, so we have to be quite careful as to picking the right moment. I don't believe in this game is going to be very bad though. So again, we load more and more farms into this station as I realize, well, there's quite a bit of forest nearby. So what we could do is actually fund a sawmill next to the factory, which is actually something I'm going to do ASAP. Because we're simply not getting enough goods here. The town's growing again. It's now passing 2,000. And what we actually want to do is we want to fund a bank next to our existing passenger services. So we're hoping that the town actually builds a house next to basically the station that you see up there. It is, I think it does end up not doing that though, so that's a bit of a shame. So by now my town is actually getting enough passengers and mail. And I'm deciding to add in the 4th station, but the town's buildings are in the way, so I'm going to use transparency options to hide those. I've already used transparency options to hide all trees, but I have that on by standard because I can't stand to look at a bunch of trees all the time. It just obfuscates things and makes it harder to play, so that's where transparency options come in. So we have pardon me, and my constant coughing. We have this all set up here to go from upper to lower, as well as using a Renard mail truck. I believe that I'm at just the era where all the trucks change, but I'm not bothering with upgrading trucks in this replay. Some people do. But again, that's one more exercise in micromanagement that I could use to improve my gameplay, but is not really fit for demonstrational purposes. So here's something that is important though that everyone should do, and that is expanding their bus stations when the town becomes large enough. When they start piling up passengers and your town is actually quite close to needing more tourists. Just expand your bus stations, make them larger so that they cover more area, and then add a whole lot more buses, and then have the server disconnect on you. Just kidding, it's not happening, it's just going to be the 20 seconds again. So again, the 8 tiles of you need. That's basically what these is. Station A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B for 8 tiles long, because stations of spread is 7. So the whole thing is going to be 8 tiles long. So you can actually service 8 plus 4, 8 plus 3 plus 3 is 14 tiles by a little bit more. 14 by 14 square. That's what one station can service. And even a 60k town will have enough around about 8 or 9 of those bus stations to get all the services at once. My town's quickly growing. It's now at the 3,000 mark. And you've may have noticed that it starts growing faster and faster. This is intentional as part of Citybuilder. Town growth speed is actually unlocked by the server, so the servers can change it, and it does so automatically. Town growth speed starts out, I believe it's slow or normal, and starts going faster and faster until the last 2 years it's on fastest. which is kind of nice because it allows much more strategies to be used than would be possible if you had a blanket normal town speed growth. Of course, a blanket fastest town speed growth would be kind of ridiculous, but who knows? Some very good players also have the same problems with the train limit, which is kind of funny as well. Train limit has been raised from 250 to 300, so problems should come up slightly less. Still kind of cute though that someone actually managed to get 300 trains in 3 hours. I'm not currently not yet capable of doing that much clicking just yet. That's going quite rapidly here, where I'm expanding with another farm line here. And I've left those lines open on that large station on purpose so that they can actually grab and get more stuff here. I immediately buy 5 trains. Now, here's something else that's interesting. When you are actually expanding your farm line, I am actually currently building in the logical order, right? I'm first building my main line and then feeding it. Remember, what you actually should do is build it in the illogical order, feeding first and then building the main line. Why is that? Because you're going to end up getting more stuff that way, of course. You're going to get up getting your stuff slightly earlier if you feed first and then expand. However, for instructive purposes, like seeing me actually build a line, you know, and understanding how it works, it's much more, yeah, it's much more easy to see what I'm doing if I build the main line and then the feeder, because you can see how it works more easily if you see this order of construction, the way that most people actually think. No, I need to get stuff at my factory, so I need to bring it from my farm, but one farm is not enough, so I need to bring more, so I need to bring other farms to that one farm. That's a reasoning that I find easier to follow than going from, okay, I'm going to grab some stuff at this farm, and then I'm going to bring it to this other farm for no adequately explained reason, and then I'm going to bring it from this other farm to this other farm for no adequately explained reason, but then I'm going to bring it to my factory, and then you realize that all I've done is actually the most effective way. That's a mathematician's way of saying things, and most people don't actually understand what the hell he has actually been talking about until they sit down and think about it for half a year, and then they realize, oh wait, that guy was actually really smart. But it's not very useful from a gameplay perspective for someone trying to learn this game. So, of course, when you're trying to make the most money you can, you actually want to first build the line and then feed, of course. But if you want to get the most stuff, yeah, first feed, then build the line. You're gonna have to pay some upfront costs for your feeder trains, but let's face it, when you're actually funding coal mines, you have more money than God, and you should be spending it as much as you can to get every little advantage you can get. I believe I do, for instructive purposes, do this once, build it in the opposite order, which is kind of cool nonetheless. By the way, if you're playing on the Quest server and you're doing that, then you might get a ban for that, because you're not allowed to have more than one unused station. So in the Quest server, you should build it in the order I am building it now. You must build in the natural order. I believe this is a small little mistake here. I may have been able to expand the existing station to include that farm. Don't really know. Adding in one more feeder to my existing farmlands. So I'm now at the point where funding coal mines is not going to be that much more profitable. Not going to be that much profitable because there's not that many years left, I believe. There's 87 now. what we're going to want to do now is fund farms to get more and more and more livestock and grain in the factory, because more goods are required all the time. They're funding more buildings. Still not completely funding every 3 months, but it's a lot better than at the start of the game, I can tell you that. And we're now going to fund a lumber mill, a sawmill. That's too close to the forests. You're not allowed to do that. There's an annoying terrain in the way there, so we just grab that tool and level everything and build it there, and then realize, hey, wait, that's slightly too far away from the station, so I'm gonna have to relocate that top platform to actually account for the lumber mill. But who cares? And I actually failed to realize that this is the case, and actually end up piling 2,000 lumber on that station for no good reason. But that's still kind of funny to watch. And again, I'm using the same old tricks. Realize how this guy doesn't accept lumber, this guy still doesn't accept lumber because it has to be the bottom tile. This is kind of annoying. Each industry actually has an accepting tile. We have to include that tile or it won't accept, station won't accept. You have to include that one bottom tile in your station's acceptance area or you won't get any lumber. That can be quite a bit of a chore to get that to work. And 2 trucks is more than enough to get everything from these 2 forests, and that gets me 200 more crates of goods each month without having to do much for it at all. Just like build the sawmill and get the thing there. I'm gonna get a train there as well, and realize, oh wait, this guy doesn't accept wood. No, I don't realize that just yet. I realize that like months later. It's kind of funny. So I have an idea here that includes feeding. You know, this design is that good. It's not ideal, but it is very fast to build, so that is a plus for it. I realize we still do not have the TIM, but it should be coming fairly soon. Just using a transfer order right here. And after that, the usual thing, which is to get it to the town. The more stuff you get to the town, the bigger the town grows. It's very simple. As you can see, we're delivering quite a bit of stuff to the town right now from our overview, which is always nice. Every couple months it provides that little message to you and it tells you how much your town grows. Again, paying attention to previous stations. One thing I haven't demonstrated much here is something you can actually do to make this process a little bit easier. And that is to use your station overview list, where you can actually see how much stuff is waiting in each of your station. If you spot a station with a lot of stuff waiting, you can just zoom there right away and fix whatever problem there is. You know, like not enough trains, or a section of rail that is wrong, or a signal that is wrong, or not enough. I already said not enough trains, or not enough rails, or something that doesn't accept the cargo, or whatever other issue you might have that is preventing maximum throughput. Of course, some good players actually do this intentionally. Get a good amount of stuff to pile up at a station so that they can actually get more stuff in the later months because they got this stockpile, but you can then use that when your town reaches like a really high amount of people and you can't even get it to grow anymore, even with like 300 trains on it, that you actually use up your stockpile and eke out that a couple more people that you can actually get That's how far people have already gotten, so it's kind of interesting that the records that have been set in this game are actually probably quite close to what's actually possible. I believe that 80,000 people is quite a hard target. It may be met, but that will be very hard to do to get much over the current record. I believe the current record is like 64,000. We're not quite close to that by any stretch of the imagination. We do get into the same order of magnitude, I believe, though. That should be possible. Yeah, that should be possible with the current influx of goods. It's going quite efficiently. Here I move my station away. Actually, I do this thing I just explained right now. I don't think I did it intentionally in this thing, but it ends up helping me quite a lot here. That I get these passengers stockpiled up at the station. I don't think I end up using them, but I could have. It could have helped me a lot. That's the important thing. And following us along, we're still developing the town, of course, as is normal. We have some trains piling up in this station here. This is completely normal. And it's actually completely fine as long as we have a decent amount of stuff moving in. So now we're getting to the trouble that the town's almost at 2,500, so in reality we really should get a bank, but I'm trying to stretch it out a little bit, hoping that the town may still build a house next to my passenger station, but this ends up not being the case. That is just very unlucky for me. And that's my third biggest mistake, but that's just luck, and it's just this game. So yeah, that sucks a bit. That I had to suffer that as well as the other things. But on the other bright side, it does mean that if it does not happen in another game, then that game will probably be significantly better. Right. So here again, I tend to be a little bit OCD at parts, and when I'm wanting to make a railway line that at least looks a little bit the part and have these weird dips in them. Although they don't really matter that much, they just look terrible. So here's something that I did very well, and that is putting the bridges on the lesser used passenger line and not on the higher used. I realized that going through that mountain is going to be an arduous process, so just go around it because that's 4 tiles more traveling. It's not terrible. Decided to bridge over. I should have maybe tunneled that, but on the other hand, I'm very near the terraforming limit, so might not have been able to afford that. This works decently as well. So I put another factory on the other side of town because I was a little bit worried about the infrastructure near the first factory, because it was getting quite a bit cramped building an additional conga line of goods trucks. You know, the goods trucks that are near the factory that drop goods off directly into the town, like 1 square away. One of those lines of vehicles is not going to be enough if you have a factory with like 2 full stations inputting into it. Of course, the second consideration that made me put the factory on the side of town is that I did not need to have like a large line going all the way around town into the first factory. But instead, I could keep my lines a little bit more organized and take up slightly less space near my town, because real estate near your town is really a precious and valuable commodity. So building that second factory actually probably will end up taking far less space than building lines around town would have, because let's face it, the original factory is a bit on the wrong side of town of things, because there's just much less stuff on the south side of town than there is on the north side of town. Or this is way more farms here. So here you can see me just continuing to build these things. What you should do this part of the game is just continue to build and add more industries to your collection. And as soon as you see your money go over in my case 1 billion yen, so that's about 10 million pounds, and you just fund another farm. And of course you need to keep funding the town, which I'm kind of positive I'm doing right now. Funding it too much isn't that bad. Funding it too little is kind of terrible at this stage of the game. And yeah, as I said, that's the second biggest mistake behind the first biggest mistake of not setting up the original first line successfully, costing you a couple months. And the third one, which is just bad luck with the bank and all that. Well, there's several others I pointed out during the video as well, but they're less consequential to this play. I'm looking around and trying to see whether or not I can be a little bit handy about how I join all these farms up using my simple single line per feeder design. Some people like to use multiple lines per feeder, and that works out just as well. I like to use a single line per feeder, unless I know that the feeder is going to require more than one train, in which case I set it up more grandly. Trying to build realizing that the town's not getting me any houses here. I was a bit premature with my comments, and that I need to build a bank in a more annoying location. And due to the geography of the hills upon which the town is built, it refuses to build even relatively outside, and it ends up getting plopped down there, which is probably the worst location it could have been in because it requires feeders from both the passenger stations. I mean, I don't see how I could have done any better, because the town decided to build all its houses down south and not up north. And where it decides to build houses is completely random. Not building enough roads is not really an option either, because it requires you to demolish existing buildings to actually build the road network you intended to build in the first place, which is even worse. Demolishing buildings in your own town is probably one of the worst things you can do for the growth of your own town, so yeah. Here again, when you use this kind of feeder system, remember that you should set your armored trucks that you use to load the valuables from your drop-off stations, there's our 2,000 bags there, to your bank, that you do not load at your bank, that you set it to no loading on it. Why is that? Because otherwise they're going to just pick up goods from the station near your own town's bank and gradually fill up with those and never drop them off, and they just end up being full and not doing anything. I believe those four are going to do that as a demonstration here. As I realize that when I make my second batch of trucks and set my first batch to actually load, I modify the road network here a bit to accommodate the stupid location of the bank. I really can't afford putting stations on the four main roads leading from the center of town. Why is that? Because these four main roads are basically paramount to putting additional trucks into existing stations, right? If I want to minimize the amount of road depots I use, I will want to keep those four roads from the center intact and not with any trucks in them. Unfortunately, I need that pair of trucks at this train station right there for getting stuff into the bank. And at the other train station I'm also building a batch. Do the same thing. I'm putting it slightly more to the north here so that I can at least expand the mail truck that is driving parallel to the new armoreds. Again, and now I adjust the schedules properly this time. I'm a bit pondering about what I should do with the HQ. Relocate it back to a more useful place, because I've realized, hey, this guy doesn't accept passengers and mail anymore, so I'll just relocate my HQ there, because I now do need the passengers. I unfortunately forget to build like a bus stop off to put my old passengers back in, but it's a bit of a shame. Right, now one other thing you can do is once your town gets big is that not only will you want to fund the town, but you also want to do that, a large advertising campaign. I believe I've done it a couple times
before. What that does is boost the ratings in the stations inside your town. By natural, your road vehicle ratings will be like 70-80%. So you're looking at 70 to 80% of the goods that you create in your factory. If, however, your factory is within 20 towns of your town center, which it should always be, you will basically, if the goods loading station nearby your factory is within at least 20 towns of the town center, that rating will be boosted to outstanding, or nearly 100%. So you'll get 95 to 100% of the resources. But getting 95 is about as good as it gets. And that's of course much better than the 70 to 80% you would naturally have. That's something to think about. And we have this station running fairly efficiently. I realize I did not have that farm in my coverage area, which is kind of not ideal. And of course, that station at that very little village is not for growing the villages, instead for picking up things at the local farm, which is just at that village. Like many others, do not bother with getting passengers and mail from small villages unless that is really the last option you have. I did have a desert map with a lot of competition on it earlier that did require me to do that just that thing. Right, as you can see, I made a little bit of a road creation error here, where the vehicles are going into the depot. You don't want that. We want to build a one-way road in the opposite direction, just less that I did in all the bus stations earlier. If you do that, then of course the road vehicles will immediately turn around instead of taking the long way. And if you want to use this road design, you're going to have to use these one-way roads. Keeping the buildings transparent, of course, greatly increases. I realize that I'm not going to be able to keep up with the amount of values coming from the train, so I'm going to have to use another tile of space in the town to get another bit of road vehicle depot station thing near the bank, just to keep up with things. So right now things are looking rather rosy for the town. Its demands are being met and exceeded by quite a large margin. So if I keep funding for the town up, its growth should explode in the next 5 years. Or 4 years, or whatever. 4 years I have left, 4 years and a bit. So right now the new train should have been available by some time. I believe the newspaper, I just missed the newspaper, or I can't remember exactly when that train appears. When trains appear, it's a bit random. It can be anywhere within a 2-year time span, so it's nice to pay attention to that. I can't remember whether I actually recorded making the switch, but it should happen fairly soon. As here we're overviewing the transportation network we've built. It's quite a creation. It kind of dwarfs the network of the red player, which actually consists of a single line where a lot of different things are combined. Combining multiple things in one line in Citybuilder is not recommended. It's recommended that you reserve lines for one particular type of good and keep them there, because in the end you're going to need more than one livestock and grain line anyway to even compete with reasonable players' towns. So what's the point of sharing your lines if this is the case? Right, if I need more than one line worth of coal, and sharing my coal line with the grain, that's not really going to help me much. I need more than twice as much as a single line can support anyway, so for both goods types. Why would I use a single line for something that I require 2 or 3 lines for? I do not know. Again, here we have another one of those nice little off-by-1 errors, where I realized that this is going to block the inputting the train going in the other direction, so we're going to have to demolish. Using the bulldoze tool is a very nice way of quickly getting rid of complex structures. It's better than using the standard remote will micromanage this train here. That's largely inconsequential. I should not have done that. It would have been better to just conclude building and build faster, not do overviews of my real network and demonstrate to get more points. But this is a demonstration after all, so we're not that concerned about maximizing town size. Alright, and I believe this is a reasonable split here. Full bridges over this one passenger line. It would have been better to bridge the passenger line over the farm lines, but that would have doing that now would have taken too much construction work to get fixed and correct. So doing the quick and dirty solution is sometimes the better one, especially since it's not going to be that busy on these farm lines because they're all feeders. Yes, and I believe that I realized that may have overdone this feeder a bit because the train's running very slowly, so I add in 2 more farms here. I think I'm bringing the total up to like more than 10 right now on this single line. So one farm has, I think, around 300 tons of production. So one farm can support a train per month. Right, and that is quite a lot because a full line, getting 10 trains per month is about as much as you can get. So 10 farms, that's approximately the amount that's supported by like a standard line with standard stations. If you use the more efficient 3-way versions, you can get away with more than about that. But 10 trains per month is a good approximation number. It's about the order of magnitude. The exact amount of trains per month depends a lot on the train type, the station design, and other variables. So you should experiment and find out the exact numbers. I have not done that yet. But for purposes of this game, it's quite a nice thing to know just how many trains per month you can support in the station. Is how many farms you can actually support on one station, on one line. That's a crucial bit of information for getting a high score, of course. Because getting too many farms on one line is detrimental to your performance. Getting too little farms consistently on a lot of lines is also detrimental because you're taking up too much space with those lines. That's a bit of an advanced technique. Here's an interesting facet of a mistake I make here. If you do this, at least demolish the way into your original mail station. If you share stations, right? I'm sharing the goods station with the mail station. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to look at something else while the trucks get to their destination because I think, oh, this is going to work fine, but it's not, right? Because we've just seen, I realize we have Tim's now, and I have the money to upgrade because I waited a little bit and did not fund any mines, so we have a little bit of cash build up so we can upgrade a lot of trains quickly. So I'm kind of ignoring it, like, oh shit, my trucks are going the wrong way. Well, I don't realize it just yet. I'm still building the required infrastructure to get my trains upgraded faster because, again, I said that earlier, if you have a line with half and half trains, then this is not going to be productive. So building a fair few amount of these depots will ensure that any train that passes through this bit of the line at least gets upgraded, which means that they'll all get upgraded in the end. And the bottlenecks won't be as bad. This line isn't really fully in use just yet, so realizing that I haven't looked at the usage lately a lot, I look at it now. You take a look at my opponent while the server is being annoying. And it's only now that I do realize I think there's something wrong with the trucks. No, not even that. I see 3,000 tons of coal waiting on this station. That's kind of cute. Kind of awesome as well because that actually helps me a lot because I now have a huge coal income. is roading everywhere. Found new buildings, of course. And now I see, oh, we have a jam of trucks. How did that happen? Well, so the trucks go and they see the first exit to the right. Oh, that's the station I want to go. So a couple trucks turn there. They stop in the first station they can stop, right? They block it off because there's like 20 trucks coming in. Then the first section of station supports only 2. So the other 18 trucks think, oh wait, I can't go here. Hey, wait a second. The next exit is also this station, so I could go there. So they go in there, and then they're stuck in this little space of just 2, which is meant for just that one mail truck. And there's just 18 goods trucks being there, or whatever, like 16 goods trucks being there, where there's only 1 truck supported. Suffice to say that it just jams. So how many trucks can I actually support on like 6 tiles? Well, the maximum you could theoretically support is just the amount of tiles times 2. So, and then again times 2 because you can have the other way as well. So that's 24 trucks.
However, I believe that the full 24 has slightly less capacity than slightly less than the full 24 because they have to all wait for 1 truck to accelerate. So getting, say, 22 or so is a good bet. So I think I got, maybe I did get the full 24 here. Well, yeah, a good bet is just to use the amount of tiles, multiply by 4, and then shave a couple of trucks off. So for a full station, 8 tiles long, you'll want to have 32 trucks. So a good approximation is about 30. So about a full screen of trucks, a full depot will work just fine. The depot contains 30 trucks. In a standard screen, you can have that many. So that's kind of awesome. Right. Now we keep looking at these lines here. Looking around, seeing where I can easily expand things. Well, this may be quite hard to do, in fact. One possible expansion I'm seeing here is trying to get the farms in there that are top near the coal mines. Quickly realizing that building a lot of farmlands over all those is going to be a chore, so using a small feeder system up here might be the more useful thing. Which is exactly what's going to happen here. Again, there's by the way, there's no difference in plopping down your station at the correct size in one go and plopping it down basically line by line. Other than the difference in looks, it's not going to be different in performance in any way. I realize that to get a full 7 tile corner, I need to get over the blue rail a little bit earlier because I can't, of course, modify the red rail in any way. So I can't dive under it with a perpendicular, with a rail under a 45-degree angle. So I would have to use a straight bridge over the red one, which means getting earlier corner and then just putting down the singling, just like you've seen me done a couple times now, about 15 times or so. Yeah, just getting a bunch of farm trains. Again, not doing the correct order of things for maximum efficiency. You want to build your feeders first. But this is harder to follow and slightly more difficult to do. So for demonstration purposes, I end up not doing it. In this case, though, it does not make that terribly great of a difference because my town is actually more held back by the fact that I didn't press the button to fund the buildings enough than anything else. That's kind of cute, I guess. So I've now fully switched to using TIMs, as you can see. Just in one fell swoop, I'm just using TIMs now, which are quite a lot better than the SH125 for obvious reasons. course you have. And there's of course not intended, so we're going to remove that. And we have another little feeder system. And grab a couple more farms, and then we have another farm over there, which can also be gotten by simply using that. Just a quick reminder, 4-tile terrain, if you use with farms, you should really only do it for very short distances and only one farm. 2 farms, you're going to need a full terrain already. Because farms just have much higher production than other industries. They're like a double industry. So a coal mine has, say, a max of about 170 tons a month. And as soon as you get transporting, it can go up to at most 900. But that takes about 40 years before it actually gets there on average. So it's not really. But a farm can be double that. It can actually get 2,000 tons of production per month from a single farm quite easily. And if you have the modified economy settings, you can actually get double that even. I really don't know why that is, because I really like the smooth economy, but I kind of don't want. I kind of want, what I kind of want from the OpenTTD developers is like a setting within like smooth economy. You have like rough and smooth. I also want a setting to determine like the maximum capacity of industries. So I can customize that. So I can say in my games I don't want more than say 500 tons per month from a single industry. And perhaps maybe even like an economy setting where things don't change at all. Maybe I should code that in myself. It doesn't seem very hard to do. Something to keep in mind. Right, so back to the task at hand. There's 7,000 people in our town. And from now onwards, it's mostly a case of now that the town really starts growing, paying a little bit more attention to what happens within the town itself. Because the passenger and mail requirements are going to skyrocket. The goods requirement as well. I believe it's 1/4 goods and 1/4 passengers. So keeping on top of bus counts is what is recommended, as well as goods vehicle counts. I'm adding a lot more goods vehicles to my original conga line here, which failed to go in the right direction because, of course, the conga line was there was no way to get there because I messed up the road design. And of course, all of these hills here are all one tile off, so exactly where the roads need to go, there are like these sections, and I realized that, and I was like, oh my god, I have to go bulldoze this, and I have to go level out that one tile and that one tile, and it's all just very annoying and very that's just how things happen to be, kind of thing. I still managed to screw it up and be off by one, of course, because hey, why not? Why aren't you off by one? Some people are always off by one. Like again here, we could have gone one tile closer and gone with one road less. There we go. When you start building your town roads to factories and industries and things, breaking up the pattern is most usually does good in many cases, because you can get away with less roads in certain areas. You can get away with roads with 2 tiles of coverage. In between them at the edge of town and temperate, because towns tend to build a lot of malls near their edges, and those are 2x2 buildings, so you can actually get away with a little bit more space in between your roads at the edge of towns. So of course, for maximum town efficiency, 2 spaces are recommended, but it's not as terrible a flaw if you have 3. Come to think of it, isn't very terrible in Arctic either, where you have these large 2x X hotels. Putting in the signals because I need to get rid of this one tile, because I finally realized that the station has been receiving wood but not being able to actually get to wood at all. And we have to get 2 more wood trucks here take care of business. Funding the town, meanwhile, probably having forgotten it again. And removing that one station bit, so we can actually get the station limit on the server is of course 7. So again, need to remove that one station tile to get coverage. And then just using the standard moorland wood trucks to get more stuff into the sawmill just to get more goods. On the other hand, that pile of wood that's sitting inside of this station is going to help me a lot in getting more goods short term. I'm going to get a couple months where it's going to be easy to fulfill the rather high goods requirement. So right now I'm realizing that I might not have enough valuables inside my 5 towns that have valuables, because only 5 of the 6 actually have valuables. So I fund a bank in the 6th town and have connected. But that may still not be enough. Right, because I think it's like 2% or so. Something like that is the valuable requirement. Having money to spare, I just burn it on the farm. And then I try to find cities, and I realized there's a bunch of those fairly good cities, but they're all very far away. So I could try to build a train line there, but that'll end up taking most of my attention. And it's probably not going to be finished and getting me a lot of stuff until, well, basically the game's over. So, I'm not a crazy Korean guy, so I'm just going to go ahead and build aircraft. Aircraft are really a clutch thing in this server. You have a max of 5 airports. And you can use them either to start the game, or or you can use them to jumpstart the late game. So I realized, well, there's not really much of the space here for an airport, right? So I might go with a heliport. Unfortunately, I think that there's already a decent helicopter available, but then when I look at the menu for helicopters, I see that, oh wait, we're using the poor standard set, so there's only a rubbish helicopter available. So helicopter is really not an option. The helicopter that's available is very slow and just has a rubbish capacity overall. Of course, because it's just a helicopter, so it's not that good. Which was something I soon realized, because the server has a standard division by 4 aircraft speed, so the helicopter actually goes at like 80 kilometers an hour, which is rubbish. Because it's fast as A. You'll need a whole lot of helicopters to get a decent amount of valuables coming in. There's an aircraft limit of 100 aircraft, and 100 helicopters is probably not going to cut the amount required to get valuables. Now, I've explained all that quite early, actually, before it actually happens. There you can see me struggling and putting a heliport in, and oh, it's not all very instructive, is it? But it is instructive of heliports, because they could be useful as long as the distances are very short and you just have no more space. You could use heliports as a clutch as well as normal planes. I was thinking of where they could be useful, but one thing I could see happening is the same thing that happens with ships, because you can helicopters can just fly through each other in Transport Tycoon and in OTTD as well. So you could use helicopters to get, say, valuables that you got with trains to the edge of your town, actually into town to your bank in the middle. So you don't have to have a train station nearby the middle of the town, or like the road vehicles, a whole mess of road vehicles that you would need to actually get enough stuff to the bank inside your town itself. It saves you a lot of space to use for useful road vehicles like passenger and mail ones, instead of having to, It will be especially relevant in a desert climate as well, because you have much more stuff to get into your town. Much more, I'd say not much more stuff, but much more different kinds of stuff. So you need more conga lines of road vehicles, and it takes up more space. Oh, I experiment a bit, see if I can actually get a jetliner to land at a heliport, which would be funny, but no such luck. You can use a small airport to land a jetliner if you want, but the 5% crash risk is kind of bad, especially if you get rating drops in your hometown. That would be kind of disastrous. It would undermine the whole point of the aircraft. So I just was like, oh, we're just going to build like a large airport here, and we're just going to use a couple road vehicles to get it close enough to the bank, because I realized, well, I have to bulldoze too many buildings to actually get it in range of the bank. We build an airport and use unload and leave empty, and set the aircraft to valuables, and just make like 4 or 5 copies of it. Why not take valuables away from my main town? That would earn it some money. That's true, but spending time loading means that less aircrafts can land and less valuables can come in. The valuables that my own bank produces aren't really relevant as long as the bank stays alive, which it should do as long as it gets at least some input. I don't know whether or not you can actually transport stuff from a bank to itself. I believe you actually can. It sounds very silly, but I believe you actually can. Right, we're building King of the Mountain here, just building an expansion of the town's roads into this giant, enormous natural construction here. As well as in certain other directions under the airport. Of course, we're like 1 tile short of the landscaping limit, which is annoying. Remembering to fund buildings, remembering to keep the ratings reasonably high with advertising campaigns, and getting some more clutch aircraft basically to get more valuables. Building a transfer station, which is going to be very simple. The little 1 tile train station that was part of the heliport that I used extended to the bank now comes in handy to do the same for a road vehicle station, which has been positioned fairly carefully in order to get armored vehicles here. I put the road depots usually quite a bit away from the station so that they are at least out of town, at least until the town grows huge, which it probably will not that much because of the mistakes made. And of course, because this isn't really a deal, because it takes a long while before the aircraft will actually arrive. 8 road vehicles are probably a good amount. It could support about 12. This is short loading because we have 4 at one station, 4 at the other station, and 4 traveling. It should be pretty efficient and pretty enough for what I'm doing now. Taking a look at the passenger stations, because the passengers is getting quite close to what it needs, so we're going to have to expand the passenger and mail stations in order to prevent the town from stopping growing. Just what we're about to do. Also putting a mail station on the south end of town and adding several mail trucks. I believe we have a new model available, but I'm not replacing my Renard trucks that I already have because that is just a chore. It really is. Now, if you want to replace like Generation 1 trucks with Generation 2 trucks, I recommend it, but the difference between Generation 2 and Generation 3 inside of a town isn't really all that large. It's not really going to be that noticeable. They're going to be stuck behind each other anyway, so meh. I would rather have a nicely aligned town than a poorly aligned town, but slightly more coverage. So red road next to that rail is fine. There's no way I can actually reduce that without misaligning things. That would be kind of bad because that would prevent me from getting more ideal town growth. Finding an additional loading platform here. There's not much to say about that. Other than the fact that we could get 2 more coal mines. And of course here I realize, hey, wait a second, you should have been funding your town. You should be funding your town. I'm not funding the town. This is bad because we're at the one of the we're in the third to final year. That's 1 month of not funding the town, almost 2 months of not funding the town, and this is very bad. It's kind of a thing. That's basically what separates you from the better people. Not funding the town. Right. Well, getting more stuff for it, which it won't ever need because it's not being funded. But the intention is good, at least. Now, I went with 1 coal main line, alright? But to get to the top echelons, there's actually another improvement able for my strategy. Once you've mastered it with 1 line, which I have clearly not just yet, it's a good idea to go on and move on and say we're going to play with 2 coal lines, right? And we're going to create 2 coal lines. And we're going to actually create an additional coal line while building up the city. Yeah, that sounds fun. Not. I'm already having difficulties building up the city as it is, let alone building a coal line in between. Well, if you do that, then you could fund more industries later, and it'll actually end up being slightly easier in the last years. Right, so what I'm doing, I'm looking for more places for more aircraft, basically, because I've now already got most of the infrastructure set up, so more aircraft would be a very easy way to expand my valuables count. Which is, I'm kind of expecting that to become my biggest problem, really, because goods income is starting to look very rosy, and we've alleviated the passenger mail problems by using our own town, so anything that's left is, of course, valuables, which is what we're getting right now. Again, expanding the initial normal coal line here because all the trains got upgraded. We could have some more coal on it. More of a clutch money dump than anything, of course, and also realizing how close I am to the coal limit. Just keeping an eye on the relative values of what I'm actually bringing in and what is required. Something that's getting closer to the limit, it should be something that you should prioritize. What's also important is that once your town really starts getting into above the 10,000 mark, that it really quickly starts taking up more and more land. So you should be quick about having a decent amount of roads and having basically roads that lead outside of your town. Not roads that stop while there are buildings nearby, because what happens is that a town can choose to build a house right in front of your road. You will not be able to lengthen that road without bulldozing a house, which is very sad because the house could have been built in a more useful location if you'd put the road down before. So make sure that You can leave your road coverage, and I'm overdoing it a bit here, but that's again like most things in this game. It's better to overdo it than to better to be safe than to be sorry. Right, so the next thing on the priority list is of course another airport. You can have 5 airports in this server, so if you go for valuables airports, yeah, sure, just build 4 of them in 4 towns that are as far away as you think you can get, because aircraft work the best on large distances. And of course, for smaller distances, why not just build a train line there? And already got like the 6 close towns. So I was looking for 6 faraway towns with reasonably nice banks, like banks with 60 valuables production at least. And of course, I'm looking at my current airports and seeing if there's any one of them that have valuables piling up. But I bought enough aircraft that it's always important to do that, for especially for airports. Yeah, we have gotten our stuff. So I look around and see, well, what do we need? We need goods right now, actually. So I start funding the town, so we and getting an ad campaign up, so at least we maximize the goods input, and then try to find more farms. So I see like a couple in the bottom, but those would be quite hard to hook up. I see a bunch of areas that Red has already used. I look at Red's town for a while, until looking around and realizing that the best course of action would probably be to get a little bit further away from town than to try to snag up every possible farm close by. That would probably take more time than just going a little bit further away and snagging up like 10 farms in one go and just building an additional line. Because look what is here. It's like Farmtopia. It is wonderful. There's so many there that I'd say, well, you would need an additional line for that. So that's just what's going to happen. And this time we're going to demonstrate like looking around and trying to find the best pot for the large transfer station, which is going to be here. And we're going to build to this new station, of course. Now again, a more prudent player would actually build trains at the end first, and then build the connecting line. And just to point this out. In order to keep things a bit more simple, we're doing it the wrong way. At this point in the game, I do not really care much about the cost of my lines. I just care mostly about building them fast. So I keep things relatively simple and straight. Which in the end happens to be quite a nice solution. Using cantilevered steel bridges. Realizing that I do have to build a little bit of an annoying non-straight bit here. How un-American. Before finally getting past the point of carrying and simply connecting everything. Again, I could have probably built like a nice diagonal line here, but it would have cost so much more time that it would not be worth the effort, considering it's like the last 2 years of gameplay. So again, we build nice little signs everywhere. We remember to keep funding buildings as the server decides to lag out for another 20 seconds. Making sure to always keep a lookout for the actual town and make sure it keeps growing, and it does. It's quite nice, of course. Building quite a few trains here because I realized, well, this is Farmtopia, so why not build 15 trains at one go? We'll use them all anyway. Expand the station to the full 7 that we can have. Adding in additional farming stations and linking them up. And that's a lot of farms right there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 farms already. That's near the capacity of what I'm actually building, and with all the bridges that are in that line, it's actually probably at capacity. Again, a better player would have bought the trains first, bought the stations and the train first, and then built the track. I can't hammer this into my own skull and everyone else's skull enough. Build the track first, don't do this. Yeah. It's becoming more a tutorial what not to do in the City Builder game. On the other hand, everything else that I do is pretty much correct. Here, the way the lines are laid out is fairly effective. The way the station works is fairly effective. Also interesting is the technique of only feeding from behind, which increases your money quite a bit. If you feed in the opposite direction the main line goes, then you're going to lose money on that feeder because, well, you're transporting it the wrong way. This is as simple as that. And of course, abusing the fact that the transported money amount, my diagonal line is better because it uses Manhattan distance to calculate the money amounts. Realizing that, oh, I do want that farm, so I'm going to build a little complex thingy here. Requiring some additional control on the trains so that they can share this platform because there are no more platforms available for my feeders. Which is in and of itself a plus. I mean, if you fully utilize the station with feeders, that is very great. It already looks like a nice little spider web here. Having money to fund another farm, realizing that there's a lot of farms in the north, it would probably be better to fund it to the south. This station is already also near full utilization. I believe, yes, it is very nice. Putting up an additional depot, so just that one SH125 gets upgraded, but it just refuses. It plain refuses to get upgraded. And I upgrade this line to become a tri-line. We align with tri-stations in both ends. Just so that it can transport a little bit more stuff. Fortunately, that does mean rerouting the final bit of it. And also realigning the line next to it so that we can actually fit everything in there. Of course, a train just has to go through there the moment I'm building, so that makes things a little bit tougher to handle. And of course, the one SH125 that's still on the main line is going to hold up all the other trains, because just what an ass it is. How much of an annoyance that one train is. And using and abusing tunnels to their fullest potential to finish up the remainder of the tri-bit. Now over here we have this station here that is functioning quite well. Unfortunately, for us there has been a little bit of a mistake in the construction of the last line. Actually, I realized that I actually did it correctly the first time around. So this is going to be fun. Yes, this is also not quite the way you want it to be. Ah, wait, oh yes, it's supposed to be the other way around, so how do we fix this? Well, a simple way of trying to build track while there's trains everywhere is just to demolish the track where the trains come in so that you actually have some breathing room. Look at that train being dumb. That's what happens with Pathfinder. That left train is trying to move to a track that no longer exists. Before, after about a month of moving back and forth, it finally realizes, hey, wait, that track piece doesn't exist anymore. Why am I trying to move here? That's the pathfinding. That's just how it works. It's perfect as long as you don't change anything. As soon as you change something, you gotta pay very close attention to what the hell your trains are doing, because they might be doing stuff like that. Like going back and forth one tile a million times. Right, but as you can see, the increased capacity is immediately utilized by all the trains arriving on this part of the station. And this allows us to increase the amount of trains on this short bit by 3. Also, I'm basically making a bit of a guess there with the amount of trains on that line. And keeping the funding up, of course. The town's still hovering about 10,000 residents. The town's population may seem to hover from time to time. This is because buildings tend to get replaced in waves. They tend to, as soon as a town expands its city borders, it will realize that there is now a lot of houses, small, I mean like small, not the flats, but I mean the small buildings that are actually within the areas of town where you have these green trees. You can see these cedar trees. Within that is actually the city limits, basically the city limits part of the town, which means that within there buildings can be of greater stature, so you can have higher buildings in there with more inhabitants. So when those move out, as I said earlier, then the town is going to realize that and replace a bunch of its buildings with flats. And while it's replacing those buildings, of course, the population is going to go down, but as soon as it has replaced it, it shoots up twice as fast. So that's why you might see that the population may seem to hover about certain numbers sometimes, but in reality it really doesn't, as long as I'm just in time there with that road. It's like 5 seconds later and the town would have plopped the house there just in front of my face, and me not being able to do anything about it, unfortunately. Town expanding in all directions, me trying to expand the road stations to keep up with the town, but it's quickly going beyond the coverage area of my 4 initial road stations. Also, there's one that really needs more buses, another one that also really needs more buses. So we're going to get a lot more buses. Be careful with how many buses you get though, because you might hit the road vehicle limit, and I have to sell buses to get more mail trucks, because mail usually tends to be more of an issue than passengers. We're looking at the town, we're getting quite close to the mail cap now, so if we have a month with little trains arriving, then there's going to be a problem for mail, so better fix this and get more parts of the town covered with mail trucks. This can be quite hard because there's like a whole bunch of places where they're just outside of the range of the bus stations. And there's very little you can actually do about that, aside from building a large quantity of random road vehicle stations. As you can see, I'm actually ignoring even passengers on this side of town, because hey, we have enough passengers, we're transporting enough of those, we need more mail here. For these stations just outside of town, just one mail truck is enough. The houses don't produce that much mail, but every little bit helps. Again, trying to make sure that all the areas of town are within coverage of at least the mail trucks. And of course having to build those parts of hills which are in the way of me building and expanding. Also adding passengers on this side of town, because it's easier to build here. It's slightly less hilly than on the other side, but I can manage that. Building an additional road station because hey, why not? Because the other one is now so far away that starting out with 2 buses. Let's make it slightly more. Let's make it 4 buses. The town is now growing fairly rapidly, going past 12,000 in the start of the last year. So the last year is, of course, going to be slightly different than the other years, because, of course, when you fund an industry or you build a new line, it usually takes a couple months before it actually takes effect in your town. So the last months are not about building any more lines than we currently have. We're really past that point in the game. So what we're trying to kind of do is we're trying to squeeze as much stuff out of what we have as is possible in the last year. And trying, if we grab more industries, they'll have to be nearby the town, so that the effect will actually be noticeable. And of course, what we can of course do is add more trains to existing lines. For example, this line we're about 15 trains. Well, it turns out that's actually not enough. I'm looking at the target station thinking, yeah, is this full yet? Yeah, it is kind of full, but they're not utilizing both lanes. I wonder why that is. Oh, right, because yeah, there it is. We missed one tile. There we go. This should increase the capacity of that line by quite a bit. That's 4 trains waiting here. Trains coming in, trains going out. I have a planes going in and coming out. The wood stockpile that was over here is now finally getting exhausted. However, we have one on the other side now. Funding additional farms near the stations very close to town. Again, same principles apply, because they're very close to town. The effect will be noticeable during the last year. I'm buying some more coal trains on the main line, and that should be the last coal trains I ever buy. That is the last year. We could fund an additional coal mine. We could try to get one more airport up. Well, the profitability of this coal mine, I kind of call into question. It's too close to the power plant. So yeah, here's another cool little trick. If you build a road around a 2x3 area, you can force your coal mine to be 2x3, or you just plop it in an area where it can't be anything else. That's cool because the 2x3 coal mines are much smaller than the 3x3 coal mines. So you could put more coal mines near a station, so you could actually get a station with full throughput. Some ambitious people actually do that and build like a double line, like 6 loading platforms and 6 unloading platforms on both sides and coal mines on both sides, but that's a lot of money required, so that's only for a double coal line build. Is that an option? And if I try that now, I would probably end up with a very small town, but a lot of money. Building more buses, keeping the bus count up, getting more buses whenever this is necessary. Whenever the passengers start to pile up and the passenger count starts getting, the amount of passengers delivered starts getting close to the amount required. Stockpiling a bit of passengers in your stations is not very bad, of course, because that's quite nice. A little bit of a buffer to guarantee the things, because you can actually not deliver as much goods as are required to the town without a great consequence. But if you do that for coal or passengers or mail, then the town will just stop growing immediately. If you do it for goods, then you have a couple months to actually respond before your stockpiles run out. If you do it for food and stuff, the same applies, although you must deliver at least 1 truck of food a month. That's in the desert climate, by the way, or the Arctic. Valuables can also be stockpiled, of course. That's a given. But packs, no. Passengers mail can't. Neither can power, obviously. There's still one SH125 on that line. I do not know why that was not upgraded. In any case, we're not here to deal with that. We're here to expand the town's roads ASAP. And take a look at what we got. Quite a few passengers staying in the upper Avid City. Continuing to fund buildings. Making sure that the town actually keeps growing. And yeah, wanting to expand this coal station here so that the lines get their own dedicated part of the station. But realizing that the station would have too much spread, so we'd have to do it on the left side Doing it quick enough, the town might not catch up to my build speed. And we're just relaying the original line a bit here. Of course, while the trains are trying to travel there, it's kind of annoying to build. But they're required nonetheless, of course. There's one tile of road here that will not comply with our wishes. And of course trains will get lost because they kind of forget to find the actual way. And of course a lot of the signaling will have to be changed to accommodate the new design. And of course some of the trains are going to get lost now because they're in the wrong side of things. And it turns out I'm about out of time, so I do not have the time to actually fix this problem. Right. It does allow me to get more trains on this section of track though. Why isn't that train upgrading? Yes, I'd love to know why it isn't. Unless the signal that's wrong on the other side of the track, of course, is one that I missed, but it's now time to find new buildings. Right, 12th of July 1991. So at this point, fixing that long one coal line will have a tiny amount of impact on the game. This last change, it's mostly inconsequential. So it turns out so what we're going to do now is something kind of unique to Citybuilder games, where in the last 3 months, you may have noticed in the game of Transport Tycoon, buildings take 3 months, or approximately 3 months, to build. So what if our city was not growing in the last 3 months? It would not construct any new buildings. You know, the new buildings that are constructed in the last 3 months don't count anyway, because they won't complete until after December 31st, which means they will not count towards your eventual population, anything that starts building in the last 3 months of the game. So what I want to do here is basically stop the town from growing in October, November, December. So you could actually stop all your vehicles in September. But I like to do it at the start of October because the buildings take at most 3 months to build, but sometimes take slightly less. Doing it in October seems like quite a good compromise. So the 1st of October, which is not yet there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop all my vehicles, like my trains, my aircraft, and my road vehicles. Just to get the max amount of stuff. I'm trying to connect all my roads together so that the town may decide to build a couple houses there. I hope that it does. It's actually started doing so right now, so that's quite good. I found the buildings one last time. take a look at my stuff, seeing if I have to quickly get some of it, but it turns out that this is quite okay. And I'm meeting all the demands. And there's someone else who's joined the game and started watching because probably because despite all the mistakes, I'm now actually in the last year actually doing quite well. So last year went nearly perfectly. Just last 2 years I kept up the funding, and now I just stop my vehicles. And I decide, there's nothing left to do, so I'm just gonna remove the view count. I'm gonna take a look at what my opponents are doing. So they did not stop their vehicle, so that's one mistake. And I can actually go over their towns and point out a couple more mistakes if I wanted to, but of course their network design, their road design is the first thing that comes to mind. It's very inefficient to build so many roads in your town. The second thing that comes to mind is building train stations close to the center of town. You want that space to be open for office blocks. I'm kind of still doing some of those mistakes myself. You can see the station to the north is quite close in town, but moving that would require moving the truck lines for valuables, so it's already an option. The airport is quite close to the center of town, but again, moving that is quite annoying to do as well. The other stations, coal station of course can't be moved, and goods drop can't be moved either, really, because it's as far away from that factory as it can be. Well, without building like a ton of road vehicles to get the livestock and grain there, but that would be such a hassle that I don't recommend doing that. But yeah, moving stations farther away from town center makes the town building more effective. As you can see, the town's still it's still October, so this town's still deciding to build some new buildings. Some of those will finish before end of December, some of those won't. Yeah, they take 2 to 3 months to build. But it will not replace any more office blocks after this month, so that's quite a nice little thing here. There's still this aircraft that's still going, but it doesn't matter because it's not delivering stuff anywhere. I thought I'd stop my aircraft, but they decided to continue going. I think I reinforced my order. Yeah, I reinforced my order to stop here. Just making sure that nothing happens. If I accidentally had some aircraft that actually had like passengers and mail on them and they delivered them, then my town wouldn't stop growing as far as the server is concerned, but it would keep growing as far as the game is concerned. Because for the game to concern the town to be growing, it just needs to have any station that drops something off that is actually used by the town. So that would be kind of bad, because what would then happen is that the town would start growing, and for the game's concerned, the server would say, hey, you are not supposed to grow, you don't have enough staff. So the server is going to then start removing buildings from your town to keep the population equal, which means the whole trick, the whole 3-month stops all things trick is going to be actually counterproductive instead of productive. Yeah, it's quite punishing, isn't it? If you have like even one vehicle which gets to your town, and you're screwed. It's kind of funny because that would be kind of a cool way to ruin like someone's perfect game. It would get you banned if you did it, but yeah, it would be fun. Suppose you had like someone in the town of 20-30,000 people, you could like put a road vehicle station at the edge of their town because it would be outside of their town's local authority, so you would be allowed to build there. And you could pick up like with one bus some passengers, and their town would like start growing again as far as the game is concerned, and poof. So yeah, that's Citybuilder for you. The screen's now black because we're done. Got a score of 20,000. And I hope that you could pick something up, and that I won't see beginners with scores of 500 people anymore. That's kind of sad. Yeah. Even out, I guess.